The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the bonus show. We did have primary elections yesterday, sort of officially kicking off the 2018 battle for the Senate. I think most of the primaries I think it's June 5th.
Yeah, like
in
California
most states.
or next month.
A lot of the big ones are very early in June, but there are some other primaries going on. Mixed results. Don Blankenship, he bragged that he was more Trump than Trump, Trumpier than Trump. He lost in West Virginia. Businessman Mike Braun easily defeated two members of Congress to win the Senate primary in Indiana yesterday. And a number of different results. We had the Democratic, Dennis Kucinich was running for governor in the Democratic primary of Ohio. That was an interesting one. Kucinich, a guy I've met, interesting progressive guy. He lost. Richard Cordry won in that primary. Mike DeWine winning the Ohio Republican primary for governor. So it'll be Mike DeWine versus Richard Cordray in Ohio. Any particular race that you found interesting? Joe Manchin, we often talk about Manchin as like the most conservative senator. He won his primary in West Virginia.
Yeah, the Cordray versus Kucinich race I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Because Cordray was the former head of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau.
And you say Cordray. Maybe that's right. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Cordray. I don't know.
I could be wrong too.
Yeah.
And of course, he left that position to run for governor.
Yes, he did.
And he appointed someone to fill the void. But the Trump administration thought it was under their purview to pick his replacement.
Yes.
And that sparked this whole legal battle. And I think Cordray could have anticipated that. I think he probably knew that that was under the president's jurisdiction to decide.
Sure.
So, interesting move. I don't know if that was like the most progressive thing to do exactly.
Arguably
knowing that
not.
A Republican would replace him.
Yeah, arguably not. And, there's always people, that is interestingly like a really polarizing thing. One of those things where that people will often very much disagree. It's basically pragmatism versus idealism a lot of times when it comes to those situations where there's the question of, should we do the pragmatic thing that will lead to the best end result, even if it requires sort of suspension of what we would think is the right thing to do, versus do we want to just do what we feel is right, regardless of whether we are going to lead to a worse outcome? And it's personal opinion, right? I mean, there's no
and
one way to analyze it.
There's self-interest involved too, I think.
There's also
Cordray
self-interest.
wants to become the next governor.
Of
I don't
course.
know how I would have voted. I mean, I would have taken a closer look at the election, but Kucinich does seem like pretty far left. I mean, in 2008 when he ran for president, he was the most leftist guy on that debate stage.
Absolutely. Yeah, he has no, I guess we would say he has no shortage of progressive credentials. I don't know.
Yeah. And then the other race I thought was interesting was Joe Manchin versus Paula Jean Swearengin.
Yeah.
We've talked about how you're probably not going to get a progressive leftist to win the West Virginia Senate seat.
Absolutely.
So if you were voting in the Democratic primary, who would you pick? Someone who is more aligned with your ideals or someone who you think has a better chance of winning? Yeah.
I really don't know. I mean, when it comes to voting third party versus a Democrat, when voting third party could spoil it for the Democrat, like the answer for me is very simple. I vote for the Democrat because I don't want to risk putting the Republican in by voting third party, right?
And we should have ranked choice voting.
We should have ranked choice voting to eliminate that problem. If you're in a place like West Virginia, and you've got an incumbent Democrat who's better than all the Republican options, and you have a more progressive Democrat running in the primary, what do you do? I don't know that there's any right answer all the time. I think there's a good chance that if Manchin loses the primary, Democrats lose the seat.
I know. I would be so conflicted too. I think I would go with Swearengin. I hope I pronounced her name right.
Yes.
But I would have to be thinking about that for a long time because I don't know if I could sign. I don't know if I could sign off next to Joe Manchin. I wouldn't feel too comfortable about that.
I think it'd be different in a congressional district where the district might have different leanings than the state overall, but entire states vote for senator. So that it's sort of a different calculation, I guess, in some way. Yeah. Google's Assistant AI continues to improve. It can tell you the weather. It can tell jokes. It can do a lot of different things. It's going to be able to order food for you in a few years, potentially. And we actually have video of the AI booking a hair appointment over the phone, and it passed. There's this thing called the Turing test that goes back to Alan Turing, who was a very interesting guy, one of the code breakers during World War II. I forget the name assigned to that group of code breakers during World War II. Not the Wind Talkers. That's another thing. Another really bad war movie. Anyway, people know what I'm talking about. He was one of the code talkers. I don't remember. Anyway, Alan Turing. There's this thing called the Turing test, which says that it's basically a test to see whether a computer, robot, or artificial intelligence, if it is indistinguishable from an interaction with a human, it has passed the Turing test. And indeed, Google's AI booked a hair appointment without anybody knowing that. We have audio and video of this going on, right, Pat? Let's take a look.
A.m. and 12 p.m. Depending on what service she would like, what service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have a 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks. Great. Have a great day. Bye.
What do you think? Is this innovation or is this freaky? There are people who are scared because now you could get a phone call and you could think, I mean, listen, there have been robocalls for a long time, but you can immediately tell it's either computer voice or a recorded voice. This made the receptionist at the hair salon believe they were talking to a live person.
Oh, that would definitely trick me. I mean, I think we're going to get to a point where we're all skeptical on the phone as to whether we're talking to artificial intelligence or an actual person. I know, sometimes those operators can be tricky.
Yep.
But pretty soon you figure out that it's not a real person talking to you. Something like this, I think that could fool me.
Yeah, and this also is concerning in sort of like law enforcement settings. There's sort of like, oh, wow, it's creepy and where is culture going? But for law enforcement purposes, if you start using a really convincing AI to make phone calls that are either coordinating criminality or in other ways become part of investigations, then you start adding a layer where you have to say, well, who programmed the AI? Like, who committed the crime if an AI is involved in the coordination of some law-breaking activity? Is it the person who coordinated? I don't even know.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, but people are writing into me saying they are really scared by this.
And Google's AI can now write emails for you, too.
Yeah.
I've noticed that for a little bit of time because I use Google for just about everything, including Gmail.
Right.
And sometimes it will prompt these automated responses that you can send, and they fit whatever email you got. So if someone says, yes, we can book that interview for 12:15 tomorrow,
right,
the automatic replies that show up are, sounds good, talk to you then. Like, they fit perfectly. And I always want to say a little bit more than those few words, so I don't use it, but that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, this technology in the next 2 years is going to develop incredibly. And, so there's two sides going on to this development. On the one hand, you have more and more realistically human robots, like physical robots. On the other side, you have AI that is becoming more and more difficult to discern as not real people. Once you combine those two things, that is going to be a game changer for humanity, right? That's going to be when we go over the line.
And I love at the event there how everyone started clapping at the end after the AI successfully booked a hair appointment. No one's ever done that for me. It's like when a toddler successfully goes to the toilet and doesn't wet their pants and people are like congratulatory towards them.
Yes.
Like, why don't I get that praise?
It's only notable in context, right? And here the context is it wasn't a real person, and I guess that's why people clapped. Now, here's a question. Is the AI programmed to receive the clapping as positive reinforcement of what they did?
Oh, I think so, because AI and those like voice recognition softwares, sometimes they'll ask you whether or not it's bringing up good results for you, and there's like a feedback mechanism. I'm sure that's programmed into it, right?
To some extent, when people clap, it's like, I did a good job,
yes,
and I'm going to book more hair appointments. Earlier today, I was watching Gina Haspel's confirmation hearings before the Senate Intelligence Committee. She's been nominated to replace Mike Pompeo as CIA director. Mike Pompeo, of course, being confirmed already as Secretary of State, replacing Rex Tillerson. Gina Haspel was, as I've told you before, connected to the brutal interrogation programs that the CIA participated in years ago during the Bush torture era. She was asked, would you restart that if you were confirmed to lead the agency? And she said that she would follow her moral compass, not Trump, if instructed to restart those procedures and techniques, and that she would not do it. Okay, I mean, I guess that's the right answer now. If she says yes, I think that puts a monkey wrench, but would we ever know what she does? I mean, we only found out about the fact that this was being done during the Bush torture era because of very specific circumstances in George W. Bush's decision to take us to war in Iraq. Like, there's no I guess we believe her. I don't know.
And I think she deleted documents surrounding the torture,
which she made
a
point to say was not illegal.
Yeah, I feel like she wouldn't do it again, just to not subject herself to potential war crimes.
I agree.
And to not make the same mistake twice, if you even want to consider it a mistake.
For reasons of self-preservation, I agree. Like, her self-interest might make it so she wouldn't. But at the same time, like, do we really? She talked about her moral compass. Her moral compass at the time didn't stop her from approving that. I don't know.
And it's just like a question we shouldn't even have to consider as the public. Can't Trump just nominate someone to this position who doesn't have a record of torturing people?
Yeah.
But then again, I guess the president is pro-waterboarding.
He loves it.
He's in favor of things that are even worse, like killing the family members of suspected terrorists.
Yeah.
So it's not like we can put this beyond Trump.
So she's obviously getting confirmed, right?
I don't know. John Tester, who's a Democratic senator, says that he's not going to vote for her. I don't think Rand Paul is going to vote for her either. But Rand Paul said the same thing about Mike Pompeo for Secretary of State.
And then he did.
It was a close vote when push came to shove. He reneged on that and ended up voting for Pompeo. So who knows?
I know that there are discussions about how her path to confirmation is not guaranteed, but I still think that the default is she's going to get confirmed and will be the next CIA director.
Why are all these Bush appointments getting through in the Trump administration? I thought Trump was so anti-Iraq war, so anti-Bush, and now we see John Bolton and a whole bunch of other people.
The Bolton thing is truly morally bankrupt, especially given that supposedly Trump points to the Iraq War as the geopolitical failure, the foreign policy failure of the Bush administration, and then you bring in Bolton arguably to make a case for a war in Iran. Like, if the case he made for war in Iraq was so disastrous, why do you bring him in and immediately start taking some steps towards war with Iran, like backing out of the Iran deal?
Yeah.
It's absolutely horrifying what's going on. That's it for today's bonus show. Thanks to our members, thanks to our patrons, and we'll have a new show and bonus show for you tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.